Hello and welcome back to the channel. I have shied away from doing a video about my favourite photography books since I launched this channel over 2 years ago now. And the main reason is that I knew I was probably going to have to limit my selection to around 10 or so. And I knew that choosing those 10 would be rather tricky to say the least. I also knew that I should probably only select one book per photographer to avoid a bias, and I knew that that would make the selection even harder as I'm spoilt for choice. However, the time has finally come to take the plunge and select the 10 photography books that have most influenced and inspired me over the years, and whose pages have given me endless pleasure and continue to do so. I've decided that this selection will be photographers' monographs only, and I will be doing another video about books in more general in the future. I've taken time to give my collection some serious consideration and how each book I have chosen has had an impact on my picture taking and how it has helped shape my thinking about photography. What have I learned from the time spent perusing these books, and what can they teach us all about becoming better photographers? Let's find out. It was difficult for me to select a single volume from my collection of Ray Metzker's work, but I have gone for the photographs of Ray K. Metzker because it's an overview of his life and work from the early days in the 1950s right up until the early part of this century. This is a gorgeous publication with an elegant cloth-bound cover featuring an inset photograph. No expense has been spared in the design and printing of this book, and to me that's what a serious monograph of an artist's work should be like. The print quality is superb and it shows off Metzger's high contrast black and white pictures to perfection. It really does justice to them. It showcases his early street work from Philadelphia and Chicago, as well as from his travels in Europe, in places such as Spain and Portugal. It also includes plenty of pictures from his series including the composites, couplets and sand creatures. There is also a nice selection from his Pictus Interruptus series in which he would place objects in front of the lens to create abstract street scenes, a clever device. The book then concludes with the later street work from Philadelphia and some of his beautiful landscapes from time spent in France towards the end of his life. All in, this is one to seriously consider if you're looking to add a Ray Metzger book to your collection. Highly recommended. The inclusion of a Harry Gruyaert book came down to a choice of two, Between Worlds and one called simply Harry Gruyaert, which is the one that I've gone for. I think it's a good overview of his work generally, and it includes many of his earlier images which I think are his best. Again, a very nicely produced volume in a hardback cloth cover with inset photograph. I do like it when publishers go to the max on books of photography and let their designers come up with the goods in terms of classy looking covers. The plates themselves are printed with a semi-matte finish and show off Gruyaert's images very nicely. I'm not a huge fan of the layout. I think some of the photographs are displayed a little awkwardly, but nonetheless the colour consistency is very good. If you're a true Gruyaert fan like myself, you won't be disappointed by this volume. It's a book I'm constantly referring to, either when I'm looking for inspiration or to remind myself of his work. It's a great overview and also a reminder of what a master of the street picture he really is. Now we turn to a photographer who many of you watching may never have heard of, and whose pictures I would say are some of the most neglected and forgotten about out there. I speak of the photographs of John Gay, whose pictures are compiled in this fine publication called England Observed. Born Hans Gerler in Karlsruhe in Germany, he moved to England in 1933 and changed his name to John Gay. He was a highly skilled photographer who could turn his hand to anything with quite superb results. But for me, his urban photographs, which show the city in really creative ways, are the ones that stand out. This volume is packed with examples of his street pictures, plus a handsome selection of his portraits, landscapes and rural settings. I'm not pushing the boat out too far here when I tell you that John Gay was possibly the most underrated photographic genius out there. That's a bold statement, but I stand by it. John Gay was able to find beauty in everything, even in a line of hanging laundry. Now that takes some beating. It's a terrific book, beautifully printed and neatly arranged in themes, and charts his entire career. If you're looking for just one book from this list, both to inspire and simply enjoy, then this may well be it. I wrote a tutorial on my Substack page recently about how to shoot like my next photographer, and you can check it out via the link in the description to the video below. Lucien Irv was one of the finest architectural photographers out there, and it's the book Building Images which is my next selection. Lucien Irv's work is something all those who love shooting the street and the urban environment can learn from. He collaborated with the French architect Le Corbusier for over 15 years, and Le Corbusier is quoted as saying that Hervé had the soul of an architect. Well, this book bears witness to that, and it's a fine record of Hervé's work, over 200 pages with superbly reproduced photographs spanning his career. What immediately impressed me on first discovery of Hervé's work is his masterly control of dark and light and the contrast created by it. His pictures are brilliant examples of how to use the light in the urban environment to build images from shapes, form and geometry. His approach was of conveying a sense of space, texture and structure in his pictures. He was interested in how the light affected every part of the places and buildings he photographed, placing an emphasis on lines of shadow and light. This book is a go-to for me every year as I consider my projects and pictures for the year ahead. The selection of books showcasing the work of Ernst Haas has always been a bit limited. Thankfully, there is one that does the job very nicely, and that is Colour Correction, and a superb collection of his photographs it most certainly is. Nicely presented in this slip case, which you may want to leave off actually, as I can guarantee you'll be in and out of this book forever, and it does tend to soften up a bit with use. Another cloth-bound volume, and another that has been exquisitely printed on very fine paper. The book is a comprehensive record of his colour work throughout his career, and includes a fair amount of his more abstract pictures, which I love. Although I am primarily a black and white photographer, there is so much you can learn from the photographs in this book, and it's certainly one of the key books in my collection that have sharpened my eye. His framing and compositional skills are second to none. He produced quite a lot of night shots too during this time, which is unusual for the era in which he was working, during the 1950s and 60s. Ernst Haas was a pioneer of colour photography, and he could turn his hand to anything, as this brilliant book illustrates. My advice is to find a copy and buy it. This retrospective on the life of Saul Leiter, one of the most influential photographers of the 20th century, has everything you'd expect from such a volume and much, much more. Some great essays and insight, but most of all a huge collection of his photography, including some images that I hadn't seen before. It's all expertly put together and nicely arranged into chapters charting his career. There are even chapters dedicated to his fashion photography and painting. I don't need to tell you how inspiring a photographer like Saul Leiter is. It's been talked about so many times and covered to the nth degree. Saul Leiter is quoted as saying, "I'm a romantic, not a realist. I look at the most unimportant things and find beauty in them." Well, Saul Leiter, the Centennial Retrospective, lays out his life and work in great style, and I can highly recommend it. If you're thinking about building a photography book collection that will inspire, inform and entertain you for many years to come, including a book like this on such an important photographer would be the perfect place to start. When I reviewed the next book in my selection on my channel earlier this year, I remember thinking to myself that there were too few books on Alex Webb's photography available. Well, this one is definitely available, and it's Dislocations. Alex Webb is a firm favourite with many street photographers, and you can see his influence in a lot of people's work. I selected one of his images in my top 10 greatest street pictures video that you can find on my channel. In this book, Webb explores the idea of displacement. What I love so much about his photography is how he uses every part of the frame. His compositions are packed with content that always seems to fit so well, as though it somehow belongs together, almost like the scenes have been choreographed. Something I've learned from him is the importance of looking at every part of the frame when composing, and how you should think about maximising the effect of your framing by what you choose to include as part of the scene. This is a good collection of some of his work and nicely designed and presented. Another book that I recently reviewed on my channel is Daido Moriyama's Record 2, and this is currently the newest book in my collection and a welcome addition to it. It's a beautifully designed and put together book, housed in this wonderful hard slipcase with a wraparound image. I love the unusual and often abstract subject matter of Moriyama's work. He's not afraid to put himself out there and shoot whatever or whoever he wants. Some of his ideas are really out there, and looking through this book you're constantly surprised at what's waiting for you on each page. He shoots without looking through the viewfinder, pointing his camera in the general direction of his subject matter, separating himself from the more traditional photographic compositional and framing techniques. His work is truly inspiring and has often pushed me to explore street photography outside of my comfort zone, which is never a bad thing. I've known about the work of Paul Trevor for a number of years now, but it's only quite recently that I got around to acquiring a book of his work, and I shouldn't have left it so long because his pictures are an absolute joy. Once Upon a Time in Brick Lane is a marvellous collection of his pictures taken in and around the East End of London during the 1970s and 80s. Paul Trevor is described as one of the great unsung heroes of British documentary photography. His pictures are full of humour and surprise, and significantly they capture a vibrant time of an area of London that has since gone through dramatic social change and development. The superb black and white images in this book tell the story of that era magnificently. Trevor's skill at capturing the moment is displayed on every page. He just seems to have a sense of when something was about to happen. You can learn so much from what you need to know about street photography from looking at the pictures in this book. My final choice is from Italian photographer Gianni Berengo Gardin and the book Stories of a Photographer. Some of you may not be familiar with his work, but as this book shows, it's well worth exploring. Gardin has published more than 200 books of photographs, and there are a few collections and retrospective volumes of his work available. The pictures in this book span the decades from the 1950s up to the 1990s, and his output never diminishes in terms of the quality. He comes across as a very relaxed photographer. His pictures look so unrestrained, with plenty of visual wit, but he's also capable of capturing powerful, emotive scenes and personal moments. Framing and composition is top-notch in his work, and I have learnt much from looking through this book. Well, there you have my selection of 10 books that have inspired and influenced my street photography. I have referenced them constantly over the years and will continue to do so as I learn more about the art and craft of the genre. Let me know what your favourites are in the comments below and what books you would recommend to others. Let's start a book discussion about why we love them so much. Owning and looking at photography books is one of the best ways to learn how to take better pictures and how to improve as a photographer. Thanks for watching.